Angela had always been the bright light in her family. Growing up in a small, worn-out home in Ibadan, she was her parents' hope, a promise that someday things might be different. Her mother worked as a street vendor, selling roasted corn and plantains to make ends meet. Her father was a cobbler, repairing shoes under a makeshift shed near the market square. Though they had very little, they managed to send Angela to a decent school, believing her education would lead to a better life for all of them. When Angela received her admission letter to the university, her parents were overjoyed. It was no small feat, and they celebrated with neighbors and friends, sharing the little they had. Her mother even used a chunk of her savings to buy Angela a new dress. Her first one without patches. "Omo me," she said, wiping tears of pride from her eyes. "Go to school and make us proud. Remember where you come from. Always hold your head high, but never forget the people who lifted you up." Angela entered the university with high hopes and a grateful heart. But soon she found herself in a new world. The students there were from wealthy backgrounds, with expensive cars, the latest phones, and designer clothes. They dined in the fanciest restaurants and always had money to spare. Angela's eyes widened at the luxury around her. The life she once knew felt like a distant past in comparison. She began to distance herself from her old self, her old life, and especially from her family. She made new friends, girls who flaunted their wealth, who threw parties in luxurious apartments off campus, and who shopped as if money was no object. At first, Angela struggled to keep up with them. But she soon found herself borrowing and even lying just to fit in, afraid that they'd shun her if they knew about her real background. One day, her mother decided to pay her daughter a visit at school. Angela hadn't been home for months, and each time her mother called, Angela had an excuse. "I'm busy with assignments, Ma. I have exams coming up. There's a school event, I can't leave." Her mother missed her daughter deeply, and she couldn't shake off a strange feeling that something was wrong. With the little money she had saved up, she made the trip to the university, carrying a bag of Angela's favorite dishes wrapped in an old but clean cloth. When she arrived on campus, her mother asked for directions and made her way to Angela's hostel, her heart pounding with excitement and a mother's worry. She imagined the joy on Angela's face when she saw her, but Angela's reaction was nothing like she expected. Angela's heart sank when she saw her mother standing at the entrance of her hostel. The bright smile on her mother's face made it worse. She stood there, clutching the cloth-wrapped food, her eyes searching for her daughter. Angela quickly glanced around. Some of her friends were nearby, chatting and laughing. Panic set in. She had built her entire image around being from a wealthy family, and seeing her mother, dressed in her simple, worn clothes, threatened to unravel everything. "Angela!" her mother called out, her voice filled with joy. She took a step forward, but Angela froze, her eyes darting nervously. "Who is that woman?" one of her friends asked, curious. Angela swallowed hard and forced a smile. "Oh, she's just someone from my hometown," she said quickly. Her mother's smile faltered, but she didn't stop. "Angela, my beautiful daughter, I brought your favorite food." She held out the bundle proudly. Angela felt her face flush with embarrassment. "Please, Ma, you shouldn't be here," she whispered harshly, walking up to her mother and blocking her from view. Her mother's eyes widened, confusion written all over her face. "What do you mean, Angela? I came to see you. It's been so long." Angela glanced back nervously at her friends, who were now watching with interest. "I told you I'm busy. You should have called first. You can't just show up like this." Her mother's hands trembled slightly as she held the bundle of food tighter. "Angela, I just wanted to see you. I've missed you." "Please leave," Angela said. "I don't have time for this." She stepped back, leaving her mother standing there, surprised and heartbroken. One of Angela's friends, a girl named Bianca, raised an eyebrow. "She really came all the way here just to see you. That's so sweet." Angela forced a laugh, her chest tightening. "She's just an old family member, always showing up unannounced." Her mother's heart broke at those words. She stood there for a moment, her pride and love warring with the sting of rejection. Finally, she placed the bundle of food on the ground and said quietly, "I'll leave this here for you. Take care, Angela." Without another word, she turned and walked away, her steps slow and heavy. Angela watched her go, guilt bubbling in her chest, but she quickly buried it. She turned back to her friends and shrugged. Some people just don't understand boundaries, she said, laughing awkwardly. Angela stood there, trying to push the guilt out of her mind as her friends whispered among themselves. Bianca leaned closer, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Angela, she said, her tone curious but pointed, that woman looked so familiar. Are you sure she's just some random person from your hometown? Angela's heart raced, but she managed a nonchalant shrug. Of course, she said quickly, forcing a laugh. She's just an old neighbor. She probably came to ask for money or something. Bianca wasn't convinced. She called you by name, though, and she sounded so, I don't know, motherly. The other girls started murmuring, glancing at Angela with raised eyebrows. Angela's throat tightened, but she didn't let her composure falter. She's not my mother, she said bluntly, her voice steady but cold. Do I look like someone who came from a background like that? She gestured in the direction her mother had gone. Her friends exchanged glances. One of them, a girl named Tola, giggled nervously. Yeah, I guess you're right. You're way too classy for that kind of life. Angela smiled, though it felt like shards of glass were stabbing her chest. Exactly, let's just forget about it. Bianca gave her a long, searching look, but didn't press further. The conversation shifted back to their usual chatter about weekend parties and shopping trips, but Angela's mind was elsewhere. Later that evening, Angela sat alone in her room, staring at the untouched bundle of food her mother had left behind. The smell of the dishes filled the small space, bringing back memories of home, of her mother humming as she cooked, of evenings spent laughing over simple meals. She pushed the bundle away, angry at herself for feeling anything. I did what I had to do, she muttered under her breath. They wouldn't understand my life here. Angela's guilt lingered, but the pressure to maintain her new image outweighed her emotions. Her friends often flaunted their new designer bags, shoes, and expensive outings, and Angela knew she couldn't keep lying about her financial situation forever. She needed a way to sustain the lifestyle she had created for herself. At first, it started with small things. A man she met at one of her friends' parties had bought her an expensive phone in exchange for companionship. It was innocent enough, or so she told herself. But soon, one gift led to another, and the expectations grew heavier. Angela began meeting wealthy older men her friends introduced her to, men who were more than willing to sponsor her flashy lifestyle in exchange for her time and attention. At first, it felt wrong. She'd hear her mother's voice in her head, urging her to remember the values she had been taught. But Angela silenced that voice each time she put on a new dress or deposited money into her bank account. These men are just helping me out, she told herself. It's not like I have a choice. I need this to survive here. Angela's transformation became complete. She no longer felt out of place among her wealthy peers. Her wardrobe filled with designer clothes, her phone was always the latest model, and she could afford to dine at the fanciest restaurants. She became the life of every party, the girl everyone wanted to know. But beneath the surface, Angela was exhausted. The constant need to please the men who funded her lifestyle weighed on her. Some were kind, but others were demanding, possessive, and even cruel. She hid her pain behind perfect makeup and a bright smile, convincing herself that this was the price of success. One day, as Angela sat in her luxurious off-campus apartment, her phone buzzed. It was a text from one of her sponsors, a man named Chief Aide, reminding her of their weekend getaway plans. She sighed, tossing the phone aside. The ache in her chest grew as she thought of her mother. She hadn't called home in months, afraid of the questions her mother might ask. She couldn't bear to hear disappointment in her voice. Back in the village, Angela's mother carried on with her daily struggles, selling roasted corn and plantains by the roadside. Life hadn't gotten any easier since Angela left for the university, but her mother's hope for a better future kept her going. She often told herself, Angela is doing well in the city. Soon she will graduate and change our story. However, the villagers had other ideas. Rumors about Angela's lavish lifestyle had spread, fueled by people who claimed to have seen pictures of her on social media or heard about her from those who visited the city. One sunny afternoon, as Angela's mother sat at her stall, flipping plantains over the charcoal, a group of women approached her. Their voices were loud, filled with mockery, thinly veiled as concern. "Ah, Mama Angela," one of them began, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I heard your daughter is living like a queen in the city. Big girl, driving cars and wearing gold jewelry." Another woman laughed, shaking her head. "Yet here you are, roasting plantains and sweating under the sun. When will she send you money to build a big house or even start your own business?" Angela's mother forced a smile, her heart heavy. "Angela is studying hard," she said quietly, avoiding their piercing gazes. "She will help when she graduates." But the women weren't satisfied. "Graduates? Humph. Mama Angela, you should see what we saw on social media. She's attending parties, wearing clothes worth more than all the roasted corn you'll sell in a year." The laughter that followed stung like a whip. Angela's mother clenched her hands, trying to keep her composure. "Whatever she is doing," she said, her voice trembling, "I know my daughter. She will never forget where she came from. Angela will come through for me." The women exchanged amused glances and walked away, their whispers lingering in the air. Angela's mother stared at the glowing embers beneath the plantains, her thoughts swirling with doubt and hurt. That night, as she lay on her mat in the small room she called home, Angela's mother couldn't sleep. She thought of the daughter she had raised, the humble, hard-working girl who had promised to lift their family out of poverty. "Where did I go wrong?" she wondered, tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached for her phone, an old cracked device, and dialed Angela's number. It rang and rang, but Angela didn't pick up. It wasn't the first time. Placing the phone beside her, she whispered, "Angela, whatever you're doing, I hope you're safe. I hope you remember me." Meanwhile, in the city, Angela scrolled through her phone, ignoring the missed call notification from her mother. Her focus was on the new photos she was editing for social media. Pictures of her at a rooftop party, dressed in designer clothes, holding a champagne flute. The image she projected to the world was perfect. But deep down, she felt the cracks in her soul growing wider. Angela's descent into a darker world happened gradually. The pressure to maintain her luxurious lifestyle only grew as her demands became more extravagant. Designer clothes, high-end jewelry, and exotic vacations weren't enough anymore. She wanted to stand out even among the wealthiest circles. Some of the men she associated with began making more unusual requests. Angela had already compromised so much of herself that she barely hesitated when one of her wealthiest sponsors, Chief Aide, proposed something shocking. "You know," he said one evening as they lounged in his penthouse, "I have friends who would pay a fortune for your time, but it's not just them. They have certain tastes." Angela blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "What do you mean, tastes?" Chief Aide replied. "They're pet dogs, Angela. They enjoy exotic entertainment." Her stomach churned, but when he mentioned the amount of money involved, she froze. The figure was more than she had ever imagined, enough to not just keep up her lifestyle, but to surpass everyone in her circle. At first, Angela said no. The very thought repulsed her, but as days went by, the allure of the money became impossible to ignore. Every time she opened her social media and saw her friends flaunting new wealth, she felt a gnawing insecurity. She began justifying the idea to herself, "It's just one time, no one will ever know." The first time she went through with it, Angela felt numb afterward. She didn't let herself think about what had happened, choosing instead to focus on the thick envelope of cash she received. The money solved many of her immediate problems, but it also opened a door she couldn't easily close. Soon, other wealthy men heard about Angela's willingness to fulfill their darkest desires. The requests became more frequent, and with each encounter, Angela felt herself slipping further away from the person she used to be. Back in the village, Angela's mother continued to live in ignorance of her daughter's activities. The villagers' taunts grew louder, and her mother began to wonder if Angela was truly the person she believed her to be. One evening, as Angela's mother sat in the dim light of her hut, she prayed aloud, tears streaming down her face. "God, wherever my daughter is, please protect her. Bring her back to me." Angela's mother had been counting down the days to her daughter's birthday. Despite all the hurt and unanswered calls, she still believed that Angela loved her deep down. She had scraped together what little money she could to buy a small birthday gift, a beautiful scarf she thought would suit her daughter perfectly. On the morning of Angela's birthday, her mother set out for the city, carrying her carefully wrapped gift in a small, worn bag. She imagined the joy on Angela's face when she surprised her. Today is her special day, she thought. She will be happy to see me. When she arrived at Angela's apartment, she was awestruck by its grandeur. The sleek building, the expensive cars parked outside, it was all a far cry from the humble home they had shared in the village. She asked a security guard for directions to Angela's unit, and when she knocked on the door, she was greeted by loud music and laughter from inside. Angela opened the door, her face bright with excitement that quickly faded into a frown when she saw who it was. "Mama," Angela said through gritted teeth, her eyes darting behind her to the crowd of well-dressed guests in her living room. "What are you doing here?" "I came to celebrate your birthday, my child," her mother said, holding out the small gift with a hopeful smile. "I brought you something special." Angela's heart sank, but she refused to let her emotions show. Her friends were already whispering, curious about the older woman at the door. Angela felt her cheeks burn with shame and anger. "This is not the time, Mama. You can't just show up like this." Her mother blinked, confused. "But Angela, I'm your mother. I wanted to be here for your special day." Angela stepped outside, closing the door behind her to block her mother from view. "Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? Look at you. You can't even dress properly. What will my friends think?" Tears welled up in her mother's eyes, but she held her ground. "Angela, I'm your mother. I'm proud of you no matter where you are. Can't I celebrate with you?" Angela scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Celebrate? With that?" She pointed at the small bag in her mother's hand. "I don't need whatever you brought. I don't even know why you came here." Her mother's heart shattered. "Angela, don't talk to me like this. I am your mother." Angela rolled her eyes, her voice rising in frustration. "You're nothing but a reminder of the past I've worked so hard to leave behind. Just go back to the village where you belong. I don't have time for this." Her mother took a shaky step back, her face pale with hurt. She turned without another word and began walking away, clutching the gift tightly to her chest. When she returned to the village later that evening, Angela's mother was met by her husband, who was sitting outside their small home. He took one look at her tear-streaked face and sighed deeply. "I warned you," he said, shaking his head. "I told you not to go. That girl is not the same anymore." "She's my daughter," her mother replied, her voice trembling. "How could she treat me like that, after everything we've done for her?" Her husband stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've done your best. But Angela has chosen her path. You can't keep hurting yourself over someone who has forgotten where she came from." That night, Angela's mother cried herself to sleep, clutching the unused gift she had brought for her daughter. Soon, Angela's father became gravely ill. His cough worsened, and his once strong body weakened day by day. Every breath seemed more labored than the last, and the small savings they had were quickly drained as they tried to afford the treatment he needed. His condition became critical, and without medical help, it was clear that he wouldn't survive much longer. Angela's mother watched helplessly as the man she had spent her life with grew weaker. There was nothing left for them in the village. Her only hope was Angela, her daughter in the city, who had promised to help her family when they needed it most. Despite the pain in her chest, Angela's mother made the difficult decision to return to the city. She didn't want to, but the fear of losing her husband without trying everything possible pushed her to swallow her pride and seek help from the one person who could save them: Angela. She arrived, her heart pounded in her chest. She had already faced rejection from her daughter once, but her husband's life was now at risk, and she had no other options. Angela opened the door, her face cold and unwelcoming. "What is it now, you poor old woman?" Her mother tried to steady her shaking hands, forcing herself to speak. "Angela, your father is very sick. We have no money for treatment. Please, I need your help. We can't do this without you." Angela's eyes darkened with impatience. "I told you last time, I'm not helping. I don't have time for this. Go back to the village and figure it out. It's your problem, not mine." "Angela, he's your father." Her mother's voice cracked with desperation, but Angela only scoffed. "I don't care. I've worked hard for everything I have. You can't just come here and expect me to fix your problems. I don't owe you anything." Her mother's heart shattered as she stood there, unable to speak. She had tried, but there was no empathy in Angela's eyes. Angela's voice grew colder. "Don't come to me again. Ever. Go back and take care of your own problems. I won't be your solution." Tears filled her mother's eyes as she turned and walked away. She knew she had no choice but to return to the village, empty-handed, knowing that her husband's time was running out. Back at home, her husband's health continued to decline. The village was silent, save for the sound of his painful breathing. Angela's mother sat beside him, her heart breaking as she watched the man she loved slip further away. She had failed him, and now all she could do was hold his hand, whispering soft prayers and hoping that somehow he could find peace. Desperation filled Angela's mother as she watched her husband's condition worsen. With no help from Angela, no money, and no way to afford the treatment her husband desperately needed, she turned to the only people she thought might help, the villagers. They had known her for years, shared in the struggles and joys of their small community, but now she found herself standing before them, asking for the one thing they had little of: money. One by one, she approached the villagers, explaining her husband's condition and begging them for any assistance they could offer. Her voice was thick with emotion as she described the dire situation, the love she had for her husband, and the desperation of not knowing where to turn. But each time, she was met with coldness, with refusal. The villagers shook their heads, muttering under their breath, their faces hardened with judgment. "You think we have money to spare?" one of the older women said bitterly. "Your daughter is in the city, living large. Why don't you go to her for help? She's got money, not us." Another villager, a man who had worked beside Angela's father for years, crossed his arms and added, "We're poor farmers, woman. We don't have the luxury of helping others. You should be going to your daughter. Isn't she wealthy? Why come to us? We have nothing to give." Each rejection hit her like a slap to the face. Her eyes stung with the tears she fought so hard to hold back. She had tried everything, but now the people she had known for years, the ones she had helped when they needed it, turned their backs on her in her time of greatest need. One final man, an elderly farmer who had known her since childhood, spoke the harshest words. "Go back to your daughter in the city. She's got the means to help you. Don't waste your time on us. We're nothing but poor farmers, struggling just to get by." Her heart shattered as she turned away, the weight of their words sinking deep into her soul. They had once been a community, but now she felt as though she had been cast aside. They had all forgotten who she was, what she had done for them over the years, all because of Angela's wealth. She returned to her husband, empty-handed, her spirit broken. She sat beside him, unable to hold back the tears any longer. "They refused," she whispered. "They said I should go to you, that you have the money, that we have no place among them." Her husband, too weak to speak, reached out with trembling hands and took hers. His eyes were filled with sorrow, but there was nothing left to say. They were alone in this world now, and the future seemed bleak and uncertain. The reality of their situation was clear. Angela had turned her back on them, and the villagers had done the same. Angela's mother sat by her husband's side, feeling the weight of her choices and the crushing isolation that surrounded her. Angela's father passed away quietly, his breath finally still after days of suffering. His death was a heavy blow to Angela's mother, who had hoped for a miracle that never came. She sat beside his body for hours, lost in sorrow and regret, her heart filled with guilt for not being able to provide the help he had needed. He was gone, and now she had to face the painful reality alone. In the days that followed, Angela finally returned to the village, but not alone. She came with a group of wealthy friends, each one dressed in fine clothes, their eyes shining with the confidence that came from a life of privilege. They looked down on the small, humble village, with its dirt roads and simple homes, as if they were doing her a favor by being there. Angela spared no expense for her father's funeral. The burial was nothing like the quiet, humble send-off he deserved. Instead, the ceremony was lavish, filled with expensive flowers, ornate caskets, and a feast fit for royalty. Her friends made sure the event was extravagant, their laughter and chatter filling the air as if they were attending a celebration rather than a funeral. But as the villagers gathered to pay their respects, whispers and mutterings spread through the crowd. They watched as Angela, once the daughter of humble farmers, spent lavishly on a funeral that should have been about honoring the life her father had lived, not flaunting the wealth she had gained while abandoning her parents. One villager, a middle-aged woman who had known Angela's family for years, couldn't hold back her anger. "Look at this," she spat, her voice trembling with disgust. She didn't spend a penny on her father while he was alive, but now she comes here with her rich friends and shows off like she's doing something good. Her father died in pain, and she did nothing. Another villager, a man who had worked alongside Angela's father for decades, muttered bitterly, "If she'd spent even half of this money on him when he was still alive, maybe he wouldn't have had to suffer like he did. But now she's here, putting on a show, like she didn't abandon him when he needed her the most." As the ceremony came to an end, the villagers' curses echoed in the air. "May you never know peace, Angela. May the wealth you've gained never bring you true happiness. You did not honor your father when he was alive. Now you dishonor him with your show of riches." Angela stood there, her face cold and indifferent to the curses that followed her. She wasn't concerned with the villagers' opinions, nor did she care about the pain she had caused. The wealth she had accumulated seemed to have hardened her heart, and she had long since forgotten the simple values her parents had tried to instill in her. As Angela and her wealthy friends departed, leaving behind the ashes of a family torn apart, the villagers looked on with disdain. As the days turned into months, Angela's life in the city only grew more extravagant. With her father's death behind her, she fully embraced the lifestyle of wealth and excess that had once seemed so far out of reach. She continued to sleep with powerful, wealthy men, each encounter bringing her more money, more gifts, and more opportunities to climb higher into the elite circles she had once only dreamed of. Her reputation among the wealthy grew as well. Angela became known as the woman who could offer her body in exchange for luxury. Large sums of money, designer clothes, expensive vacations. She didn't hesitate to use her beauty and charm to get whatever she wanted. Soon she was living in a mansion on the outskirts of the city, the house gleaming with the kind of opulence that once felt impossible. Her garage was filled with expensive cars, sleek, shiny, and far more than a simple means of transportation. Angela drove them around the city, her hair flowing in the wind, living the dream she had worked so hard to build. Nothing was out of reach anymore. She dined at the finest restaurants, attended lavish parties, and filled her social media with photos of her life, perfect, glamorous, and envied by all. Meanwhile, back in the village, Angela's mother continued to live in the same dilapidated house she had always known. With her husband gone, she was left alone to tend to their small piece of land. She worked tirelessly, her hands calloused and worn, as the weight of her suffering became more unbearable each day. The villagers had long since stopped speaking to her, blaming her for Angela's choices and gossiping about the wealth her daughter flaunted while they all struggled to survive. No one offered her help or comfort, and she had become a shadow in the village, a figure of pity, ignored and forgotten by everyone but herself. Angela's mother still held on to the faint hope that one day her daughter would return, that she would see the error of her ways and offer her mother the love and respect she had once promised. But as the months passed, that hope began to wither. She heard whispers of Angela's lavish lifestyle, tales of her mansion, her cars, her expensive tastes, and each story felt like a knife in her heart. Her body grew weaker with each passing day, but the pain in her soul was far worse than any physical ailment. She had tried so hard to raise Angela with love and care, only for her to turn her back on everything that truly mattered. The girl who had once been her light had become a stranger, lost in a world of excess and greed. Angela's mother, despite all the sorrow and hardship that had weighed down her soul, held on to a sliver of hope that refused to fade. Years ago, her son, Angela's brother, had left the village to seek a better life abroad. He had made the long, perilous journey by land, crossing borders and seas, with dreams of building a future for himself and his family. But the news that came a few months later was devastating. She was told that her son had perished in the sea, his life claimed by the very waters he had hoped would carry him to a new beginning. The villagers had spoken of it with sympathy, offering their condolences, but for Angela's mother it never felt real. There was no body, no proof of his death, just the word of strangers. Despite the years that had passed, and despite the fact that Angela had long since stopped asking about her brother, Angela's mother could never bring herself to believe it. She refused to accept that her son was gone. Every day she would pray with all the strength in her frail body that he was still out there somewhere, alive, and that one day he would come back home. She would kneel by the old wooden chair in her tiny home, her hands pressed together in prayer. "My son," she would whisper, "wherever you are, I know you are alive. I know you will come back to me. I will wait for you. I will always wait." Angela's mother, worn down by the years of hardship and the suffering of her husband's passing, finally found herself at a breaking point. With nothing left but her prayers and memories, she reached a moment of desperation. She hadn't eaten properly for days, and the little money she had earned from selling vegetables at the market wasn't enough to feed her. She knew she couldn't survive much longer without help. With trembling hands, she took up the phone that Angela had given her years ago, a tool of connection that had become a distant reminder of the woman her daughter had become. Her heart pounded as she dialed Angela's number, hoping, no, pleading, that her daughter might show some kindness, some compassion for the mother who had given her everything. When Angela finally answered the phone, her voice was sharp, distant, and uninterested. "What do you want again, this woman?" Her mother swallowed her pride and began, her voice soft and full of hesitation. "Angela, my dear, I don't have enough to eat. Please, can you send some money for food? I'm struggling here." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Angela's response was cold, her words cutting through the quiet like a knife. "So now you're calling me for money? You've come to beg, huh? How typical. You think I have money to throw around for someone like you?" Angela's voice grew louder, filled with anger. "You must be a witch, that's what you are. You've always been one. You killed my brother with your wickedness, and now you've killed my father too, with your cursed ways. I'm done with you." Angela's mother recoiled, the words hitting her like a slap to the face. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her daughter, the one she had loved and nurtured, was accusing her of such vile things. "Angela, I did not kill your brother. I did not kill your father," she stammered, her voice trembling with shock and pain. "Please, I am your mother. I only want to survive, to be here for you. You are my only family." But Angela was relentless, her voice rising in fury. "Stop calling me. You are nothing to me now. You killed them, and now you expect me to help you. I have a life to live, and I don't have time to waste on someone like you. Don't ever call me again. Do you hear me? Never again." Angela hung up the phone without another word, leaving her mother in a state of disbelief and heartbreak. The coldness in her daughter's words echoed in her mind, each one more painful than the last. Angela's mother stood there, staring at the phone in her hand as though it were a lifeline that had just been severed. Tears fell from her eyes, but she didn't make a sound. The woman she had loved and raised, the woman she had hoped would be there for her, had turned her back completely. In that moment, she felt as if she had lost everything, not just her husband, not just her son, but now her daughter too. The very people she had sacrificed so much for, the very people she had prayed for, had all abandoned her. Soon Angela began to feel unwell. It started with a fever, a persistent ache in her body that wouldn't go away. At first, she brushed it off as exhaustion from her lavish lifestyle, from constantly partying and running around the city with her wealthy friends. But the fever didn't subside. It only got worse. Panic slowly crept in. Angela, who had been so careful about her appearance and the image she projected, couldn't ignore the signs anymore. She was scared that something was terribly wrong. After a few days of suffering, she finally decided to go to the hospital. The doctor's office was clean, cold, and sterile, and the fluorescent lights above flickered faintly as she sat in the waiting room, her palms sweaty. The thought of being sick had never crossed her mind before. Her lifestyle, her endless parade of men, all seemed like a distant memory now, as she awaited the diagnosis that she dreaded. After some tests, the doctor called her in. His face was serious, and Angela's heart skipped a beat. "Angela, we've received the results," the doctor began, his tone heavy. "You're HIV positive, and it's at a very dangerous stage. You've been living with this for a while now. If you don't get treatment soon, I'm afraid you won't have much time left." Angela's world seemed to stop. The words spun in her head. HIV. She had always been so careful. At least she thought she was. But it didn't matter now. The damage was done. Panic, fear, and guilt washed over her, and for the first time in years, Angela felt truly vulnerable. But the doctor, seeing that she was very wealthy and sensing her desperation, lowered his voice. "I can help you," he said. "I know someone who can cure this sickness, but it's expensive. It will take a significant amount of money. If you're willing to pay, I can arrange for you to see this person. They have a special treatment, but it's costly." Angela's mind raced. She was terrified, but a small part of her clung to the hope that there was a way out. She had the money, the wealth she had accumulated over the years. And so, without thinking, she agreed. She was desperate, and the fear of death loomed large in her heart. She sold her mansion, the one place where she had once felt untouchable, and gave the money to the doctor, trusting that this would be her salvation. The next day, Angela tried to reach the doctor. Her heart was pounding as she dialed his number, her mind racing with thoughts of the cure. But when she called, there was no answer. She tried again and again, but still nothing. Her fingers trembled as she searched for the doctor's office number, but when she called the number there, she was greeted with a cold, automated voice that told her the number had been disconnected. Confusion, panic, and a creeping sense of betrayal began to rise within her. She contacted the hospital only to find that the doctor had already left. He was gone, vanished, and with him, the cure, the hope, and her money. It was all a scam. Angela collapsed, her knees buckling beneath her. The weight of her mistake crushed her. She had trusted the doctor, believed in the promise of a cure, and now she was left with nothing. No mansion, no money, and no cure. In her desperation, she had been deceived, used by a man who had seen an opportunity in her fear and taken advantage of it. The realization hit her hard, deeper than the disease itself. She had let her fear of death guide her into making the worst decision of her life. Now, not only was her health in jeopardy, but so was her future. As the days passed, Angela's fear grew. The doctor's words echoed in her mind, and every moment felt like a countdown to her inevitable demise. Despite the scam, she couldn't let go of the hope that there might still be a way out. She had money, she still had some cars left, and she was willing to do anything, absolutely anything, to save herself. It was then that her best friend, Amara, stepped into the picture. Amara had always been there for Angela, even in the darkest of times, but Angela had never paid much attention to her when it came to matters of faith. Amara was a deeply spiritual person, someone who believed in miracles and had always talked about a prophet she followed, a man known for healing the sick and performing extraordinary miracles. At first, Angela had dismissed the idea as nonsense, but now, in her desperation, she clung to the thought that maybe, just maybe, this prophet could help her. "Angela, I know someone," Amara said one evening, sitting across from her at a cafe. "He's a prophet. He has the gift of healing, and I truly believe he can help you. People have been healed of worse things than HIV through his prayers. You have to trust me on this. He can make you well again." Angela looked at Amara with doubt, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes. She was grasping at anything that could offer her salvation. "I don't know, Amara. I've tried everything. I don't have much left. But if you really believe in him, I'll give it a try." Amara smiled warmly. "I know it's hard to believe, but this man's gifts are real. He will pray for you, and he also gives herbal medicine that helps cleanse the body. Trust me, Angela, this is your last chance. I've seen it work for others." With no other options left, Angela sold 2 of her luxury cars. The cars she had once flaunted, the cars that had been her pride, were now her last hope. She handed over the money to Amara, who arranged for her to meet the prophet. The prophet, an older man with a calm demeanor and a deep, soothing voice, greeted Angela warmly when she arrived at his modest home on the outskirts of the city. His space was nothing like the opulent lifestyle she was accustomed to. There were no expensive decorations, no gleaming surfaces, but there was something about the place that put her at ease. The prophet sat her down and began to speak to her in a soft, reassuring tone. "You have come to the right place, my daughter," he said. "The Lord has blessed me with the gift of healing, and I am here to help you. But you must believe, truly believe in the power of healing. It is not only through prayer, but also through faith and action. Angela, desperate for anything that might save her, nodded eagerly. I believe. I'll do anything. The prophet then gave her a mixture of herbal medicines, bottles of dark liquid, dried herbs and powdered roots, and instructed her to take them over the course of several weeks. He also prayed for her, calling on divine intervention and laying his hands on her forehead as he invoked blessings for her health. Angela left the prophet's house with a renewed sense of hope. She felt a strange calmness in her chest, swinging as though a weight had been lifted, but deep down she couldn't shake the nagging doubt that maybe, just maybe, she was being deceived once again. Still, she took the medicine faithfully, convinced that this was her final chance. Weeks passed, and Angela continued to take the herbal remedies, but despite the prophet's prayers and the treatments, her condition only seemed to worsen. Her fever persisted, her energy waned, and the dark spots on her skin grew more pronounced. She tried to ignore it, hoping the medicine would work, but her body was telling her the truth she didn't want to face. Desperate, Angela returned to the hospital for another checkup. She knew what the results would be, but she couldn't stop herself from hoping. She stood in the sterile white room, her fingers nervously tapping against the cold metal of the examination table as the doctor entered with her test results. Angela, the doctor began gently, but there was no comfort in his voice. The test results have come back. Unfortunately, you are still HIV positive, and your condition has worsened significantly. The virus is advancing rapidly. If you don't start proper treatment immediately, it could be fatal. Angela's heart sank. The herbal medicine, the prayers, the money she had spent, none of it had worked. She had trusted so many people, given so much of herself, and yet here she was, no closer to healing than she had been when she first learned of her diagnosis. No, she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. This can't be happening. I did everything. I sold my cars. I gave the prophet all that money. I thought he could heal me. The doctor looked at her with sympathy, but there was little he could say. I'm sorry, Angela. Sometimes there is no quick fix for diseases like this. You need proper medical care, and even then, it may be too late. Angela's eyes blurred with tears, but she refused to cry. She couldn't bear to face the truth. She had sold everything. She had lost so much. She had placed her faith in anything but the reality that she needed real medical help, not false promises and deception. As she left the hospital, the weight of her situation finally pressed down on her. She had been running from the truth for so long, and now it had caught up with her. The illness that had been festering inside her body for so long was no longer something she could ignore. She could no longer hide behind wealth or false hope. Her life had crumbled around her, and now she had to face the consequences of her actions. Angela's world had crumbled. She had sold her mansion, her cars, and all her possessions in her desperate attempt to find a cure for her illness. Now she was left with nothing. No home, no money, and no hope. The lavish lifestyle she once enjoyed seemed like a distant memory, and the people who once surrounded her had all but disappeared. Alone in a tiny, dilapidated apartment she had rented with the last of her money, Angela sat on the cold floor. The space was nothing like the luxurious homes she used to own. It was bare, with cracked walls and a single dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling. She clutched her phone tightly, scrolling through her contacts, hoping to find someone, anyone, who could help her. Her stomach growled from hunger, and her body ached from the relentless fever that refused to subside. She had no money for food, let alone for medical treatment. Angela's pride, which had once been her armor, was now a chain dragging her further into despair. With trembling fingers, she dialed the number of one of the wealthy men she used to sleep with, a man who had once showered her with gifts and treated her like a queen. She remembered the nights they spent together in his luxurious penthouse where he promised her the world. Surely he would help her now. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before a cold voice answered. "Who is this?" "It's Angela," she said weakly, her voice cracking. "Please, I need your help. I'm not doing well. I have nowhere to go. Please, I just need..." The man cut her off sharply. "Angela, you have the nerve to call me after all these years. Do you think I'm running a charity? Look, I don't have time for this. Don't call me again." The line went dead before she could respond. Angela stared at the phone in disbelief, her heart sinking further. Tears streamed down her face as she tried another number, another man who had once promised her everything. But this time, the call didn't even go through. Desperation clawed at her as she thought of visiting one of the wealthy men in person. Maybe if they saw her, they'd take pity on her. Maybe they'd remember the good times and help her, even just a little. Angela mustered the strength to get up and made her way to the gated mansion of one of her former lovers. She remembered how he used to welcome her with open arms, how he would boast to his friends about her beauty and charm. Surely he would help her now. When she arrived, the grand gates loomed before her, a stark contrast to the small, tattered figure she had become. She approached the security guards hesitantly, clutching the gate for support. "Please," she begged, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to see Mr. Johnson. Tell him Angela is here." The guards exchanged a glance before one of them stepped forward, his face hard and unforgiving. "Mr. Johnson doesn't want to see you," he said bluntly, "and even if he did, he doesn't associate with people like you anymore." "Please," Angela pleaded, tears streaming down her face, "just tell him I'm here. I need his help. I have nowhere else to go." The guard's expression didn't soften. "Get out of here before I call the police," he said coldly. Angela staggered back, her knees weak. The gate slammed shut, and she stood there for a moment, staring at the house she used to visit so often, the house where she once felt untouchable. Now it was just another place that reminded her of how far she had fallen. She walked away slowly, her legs barely carrying her, as she tried calling her friends. Her hands trembled as she dialed the numbers one by one, but each call went unanswered. No one picked up. The same friends who had laughed with her, partied with her, and enjoyed her generosity now ignored her completely. Angela sat down on a bench by the side of the road, her body trembling from exhaustion and fever. Her tears came in waves, uncontrollable and raw. She had once been the center of attention, admired and envied by many. Now she was nothing more than a shadow of her former self, a woman with no one to turn to, no one to care for her. As the sun set, casting an orange glow over the city, Angela looked up at the sky. For the first time in years, she thought of her mother who had begged her for help, who had endured insults and humiliation just to see her mother who had loved her unconditionally despite everything. Angela felt a pang of regret so deep it was almost unbearable, but even then, her pride wouldn't allow her to call her mother. Not yet. She was too ashamed, too broken to face the one person who might have been willing to help her. That night, Angela found herself wandering the streets with no destination in mind. Her body was weak, her heart heavy, and her spirit crushed. She had no home, no friends, and nowhere to go. The once vibrant and glamorous Angela was now reduced to a shadow of her former self. As the night deepened and the streets grew quieter, Angela stumbled upon an uncompleted building. The cold breeze of the night sent shivers down her spine, and the thought of spending the night exposed terrified her. But she had no choice. With no roof over her head, she stepped into the dark, empty structure, collapsing onto a dusty corner. She hugged her knees tightly, trying to find comfort in her own embrace. But sleep eluded her. The sound of crickets filled the silence, but the fear of the unknown gnawed at her. For hours she sat there, her mind swirling with regrets and despair. It was close to midnight when she heard footsteps approaching. Her heart raced as she tried to make herself invisible, shrinking further into the shadows. But it was too late. A group of 3 men stepped into the building, their faces partially obscured by the darkness. "Who's there?" one of them barked, shining a flashlight toward her. Angela froze, her voice caught in her throat. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't have anything. I'm just here to rest." The men exchanged glances, then burst into cruel laughter. "Nothing? You must have something," one of them sneered, stepping closer. Angela shook her head, her tears streaming down her face. "I have nothing. Please let me go. I'm sick. I'm HIV positive. Please." Her words seemed to have no effect. Instead, the men's laughter grew louder, crueler. "HIV positive? Do you think we care about that?" one of them said. Before she could react, they pounced on her. Angela fought back with every ounce of strength she had left, screaming and begging for mercy. But they overpowered her. They had their way with her, ignoring her cries, her pleas, and her warnings. It was a night of horror, one she would never forget. When the ordeal was over, the men left her there, Angela curled up in the corner, sobbing uncontrollably. Her body ached, her spirit shattered, and her mind was clouded with despair. She stayed there until dawn, too weak to move, too ashamed to face the world. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the sky, Angela gathered what little strength she had left. She couldn't stay in the city any longer. She had to leave, to go back to the one place she had turned her back on, her village. The journey back was long and arduous. She walked most of the way, her body frail and her heart heavy with shame. When she finally arrived in the village, her appearance shocked the people who saw her. Her once radiant beauty was gone, replaced by a gaunt face, hollow eyes, and a frail frame. The villagers whispered among themselves as she passed. "Is that Angela?" one woman asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "Look at her now. See what city life has done to her." "I heard she's HIV positive," another added with a sneer. "See how she's paying for her sins. She had all that money and couldn't even help her own family. Now look at her." The cruel words cut through Angela like a knife, but she kept walking, tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to defend herself or respond to the taunts. She knew she deserved their scorn. When she finally reached her mother's house, she hesitated at the door, her heart pounding. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. Her mother, who was sitting on a worn mat, looked up in shock. "Angela?" her mother said, her voice filled with disbelief. Angela fell to her knees, her body shaking with sobs. "Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Please forgive me. I've failed you. I've failed everyone." Her mother's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her daughter, broken and repentant. Despite everything Angela had done, despite the pain and humiliation she had caused, her mother's love remained steadfast. She knelt beside Angela, pulling her into a tight embrace. They both cried, their tears mingling as years of pain and regret spilled out. "I forgive you, my daughter," her mother whispered, stroking Angela's back. "You're still my child. No matter what you've done, I will always love you." Angela clung to her mother, her sobs growing louder. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of peace, a sense of belonging that she had lost in her pursuit of wealth and pleasure. She had finally come home. 2 days after Angela returned to the village, she was lying weakly on a mat in her mother's small, crumbling house. The air was quiet, except for the sound of her mother humming a soft hymn while peeling yam outside. The peace of the morning was interrupted by the sound of a car driving into their compound. Her mother paused, confused. No one in the village drove such an expensive car. The vehicle stopped and the driver stepped out. Angela's mother squinted, trying to see who it was. Her heart skipped a beat when her eyes landed on the tall, handsome man stepping out of the car. "Is that?" she whispered, dropping the yam and running toward him. "Mother," the man called out, his voice thick with emotion. It was her son. The son she had cried and prayed for every single day since he left. The son who had been declared dead after attempting to travel overseas. The son she had refused to believe was gone. He was alive. Tears ran down her face as she threw herself into his arms. He hugged her tightly, and they both wept, their joy filling the compound. My son is alive. God, thank you," she cried. "Mother, I've missed you so much," he said, his own tears soaking her shoulder. They held each other for a long time before she finally pulled away, holding his face in her hands as if to make sure he was real. "Where have you been?" "They told me you drowned in the sea. I've been praying and waiting for you all these years." The son sighed deeply, his face full of sorrow. "Mother, it's a long story. When we were trying to cross the sea, our boat was stopped by police. They arrested us, and I was sent to prison in another country. I didn't have anyone to fight for me, so I stayed there for years. But later, the truth came out. They found out I wasn't guilty of the crime they accused me of. They released me and even paid me a lot of money as compensation for the years I spent in jail. That's why I'm back now, Mother. I came to find you and take care of you." His mother couldn't stop crying. She hugged him again, her body trembling with joy. "I knew you were alive. I knew God would bring you back to me." After a while, her face grew serious. She wiped her tears and said, "My son, so much has happened since you left. Life has been very hard for us. Your father—" Her voice broke as she mentioned her late husband. "Your father is gone. He fell sick, and we couldn't afford to treat him. He died right here in this house." The son's face darkened with sadness. "Father is gone?" he asked quietly. His mother nodded, tears streaming down her face again. I begged Angela for help. She was living in the city and had so much money, but she refused to help us. Your father died in pain while your sister was living a reckless life. She wasted everything she had and turned her back on us. The son clenched his fists, anger flashing across his face. "Angela, my own sister refused to help." His mother sighed deeply. "Yes, my son. But that's not all. Your sister is very sick now. She has HIV, and it's at a very dangerous stage. She has sold everything she had, and now she's lying inside, weak and broken." The son's heart sank. He didn't know what to say. The thought of his sister, who once lived a life of wealth and pride, now sick and helpless, was hard to process. "She's inside?" he asked, his voice heavy with emotion. "Yes," his mother said, nodding, "but before you see her, you must understand. Angela is not the same person she used to be. Life has humbled her. She has been through so much. She's sorry for everything she did." The son took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "Let me see her, mother. I need to see her." His mother led him into the small, dark room where Angela was lying on the mat. She was so thin and pale that he almost didn't recognize her. Her once glowing skin was now dull, and her eyes were sunken. She looked up weakly as they entered, and when her eyes landed on her brother, she gasped. "Brother?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Angela," he said, kneeling beside her. He took her hand, his eyes filling with tears. "It's me. I'm back." Angela burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I've been a terrible sister. I failed you. I failed everyone. I don't deserve your forgiveness." Her brother shook his head, his own tears falling. "Angela, I'm angry at what you did, but you're still my sister. I'm here now, and we'll figure this out together." Their mother stood at the doorway, watching her two children. Though her heart was heavy with all they had been through, she felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, her family was beginning to heal. 3 days later, Angela's brother packed up their things and drove his family to the city in his luxury car. Angela sat quietly in the back seat, her head resting on the window, unsure of what awaited her. Beside her, their mother clutched a small bag, gazing out of the window with hope and anxiety in her eyes. When they arrived, Angela couldn't believe her eyes. Her brother stopped in front of a grand mansion with sparkling windows, a tall gate, and expensive cars in the driveway. The garden was lush and perfectly trimmed, with colorful flowers blooming in every corner. This is your house?" Angela asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," her brother said with a smile. "I bought this house before coming to the village. It's ours now. You don't have to worry anymore." Angela fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Brother, I don't deserve this. I've done so many wrong things. I hurt you, Mama, and everyone who loved me. I don't deserve your kindness." Her brother knelt beside her, gently lifting her chin. "Angela, you made mistakes, but you are my sister. You are still family. What matters now is that you've learned from your past. We all deserve a second chance." Their mother, standing nearby, wiped her own tears and pulled both of them into a hug. "This is what I prayed for," she said softly, "to have my children together again." The next morning, Angela's brother took her to a reputable hospital for a proper checkup. Angela sat nervously in the waiting room, her heart pounding. She had lived with the fear of dying for so long that she couldn't imagine hearing anything different. After what felt like hours, the doctor came in, holding her test results. His face looked calm but curious. "Miss Angela, your results show that you are perfectly healthy. There is no sign of HIV or any other illness." Angela's mouth fell open. "What?" she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. But the other doctors said I was sick. They said I was going to die." The doctor sighed and set the results down. "Sometimes people are dishonest. It seems they might have lied to you. I can't say why they did it, but from what I see, you are completely fine." Angela's brother frowned. "Those doctors tricked her," he said angrily. "They made her sell all her properties and left her with nothing." Angela felt a wave of emotions crash over her: shock, relief, and regret. "Why would they do that to me?" she asked, tears spilling down her face. The doctor hesitated. "I heard rumors about 2 doctors who do this to people they feel have wronged them in the past. If you ever had any dealings with them before, they may have wanted revenge." Angela's knees gave out, and she collapsed into a chair. It all started to make sense. She had promised marriage to one of the doctors in the past and borrowed money from the other, only to disappear without a word when she became wealthy. They must have planned this together to teach her a lesson. As painful as the truth was, Angela felt an overwhelming sense of relief. She wasn't dying. She had another chance at life. When they returned to the mansion, Angela ran to her mother, who was cooking in the kitchen. She dropped to her knees, grabbing her mother's hands. "Mama, I'm not sick," Angela sobbed. "The doctors lied to me. I'm fine. I'm going to live." Her mother froze for a moment, then let out a cry of joy. "Thank you, God," she exclaimed, pulling Angela into a tight hug. "My child, you have been given a second chance. Use it wisely." That evening, the family celebrated together. Angela's mother cooked a feast, and her brother shared stories of his time overseas. For the first time in years, laughter filled their home. As Angela looked around the table, she realized just how much she had lost, and how much she still had to be grateful for. She made a silent vow to rebuild her life, honor her family, and make the most of the second chance she had been given. The tears of regret that had once filled their lives were now replaced with tears of joy and hope for a better future. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.